first heard about 101 Ways to Die, I thought it was a tie-in to a movie or a TV show of a similar name that I had never seen before. And to be honest, I didn't even know which movie or TV show it was, but I vaguely remember properties with names that sound like this, and I just figured it was something of a horror slasher gimmick that was all talk and no substance, but now in video game form. Tie-in properties like that aren't typically worth your time, but luckily, this has nothing to do with whatever nonsense I may or may not have created in my own mind. I was way off. When you start the game, you're treated to a little comic strip type scene that sets our story up. We open up on the home of Professor Ernst Splattenfutter, who's now described as an industrialist, a scientist, and a mentalist, and we get a bit of a backstory on how he's a recluse and the mansion has been all but abandoned for years. Where we really end up is well below his mansion in the basement catacombs where he spent most of his life and has built labs designed to find new ways of killing, to create Compendium, the 101 Ways to Die, and he's just about done with his research. Unfortunately, for the good old doc, one of the splats, which are the humanoid creatures he's Frankenstein monstered up in the labs, has accidentally set up a bomb, and yeah, you guessed it, the whole operation explodes with it. So, not quite dead and definitely not yet satisfied, the doctor vows to restart his work and finish it once and for all. And that's where we come in. We're the professor's assistant. An assistant he's found through a temp agency. We are tasked with rebuilding and rediscovering the lost research for him. And that's pretty much the extent of the story we get, love it or hate it. It definitely has a few chuckles in the brief minute or so of plot. It's oddball, that's for sure. But a game like this doesn't really need a story to be on par with something like BioShock or The Last of Us. Get in, give us a reason, and get out, allowing us to participate in the task at hand. And what's that task at hand? Organized murder? Well, is it murder if the things we're killing were created specifically for murdering purposes? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a geologist. What game the developer for Door Lemon has created here is basically the anti-Lemmings. Reverse Lemmings. The opposite of Lemmings. Basically, I'm saying it's like the franchise Lemmings, but instead of saving the poor bastards from their famous walking off a cliff routine in numerous ways, we're here to kill these poor bastards in unique and numerous ways. There's just not too many games like this. After a brief stint of get the mechanics down in the training labs, we move on to the basement proper, and from there, we head on to the control room, the biozone, and Sector 0. Each stage has at least 10 levels to help us on our journey to bloodshed. The crux of gameplay progression here is your standard 3-star system that is all the rage these days, and it works well enough in execution. Pun probably not intended. Each action nets you points, too, so there's a leaderboard, and you can use that in consideration if that's the kind of player you are. The levels are constructed in easy, medium, and hard difficulties, and honestly, sometimes even the easy levels aren't so easy, especially when you're trying to get all 3 stars. Now, in order to unlock newer levels, you need certain amounts of stars, so progression isn't always just get out by the skin of your teeth, which sometimes you'll really want to do. If you only achieve the graduate goal in a level, you'll eventually have to replay it to attain the master goal and the 3 stars so that later levels will open up for you. It's not a new gimmick by any stretch, but you know what? It works well for the style of game that this is. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes even the easy levels can be a pain in the ass when you're setting out to master them. The problem is that each level isn't just kill some splats for 1 star and kill all splats for 3 stars. That'd be too easy and too simple. Eventually, you just stop having fun. With how hard the game can be, you may end up not having fun anyway, but that's a different argument for a different day. I use problem here in quotes because it's not really a problem in the sense that it hurts the game. It's you and your character's problem to solve each level in specific ways. One level may allow you to kill splats any way you see fit for the base goal, but some may require to use specific traps and gadgets to get that entry star out of the way, and then when working on the master goals, those are even tougher. Some may be simple, kill 2 splats with spikes, but more often than not, these goals, multiple goals, require you to chain combos with traps to kill the little monsters, and honestly, challenging is a nice word to describe it. Fucking insanity-inducing is another way you can describe it. Nice or not. As I progressed through the various stages and levels, I got into a groove and at times I felt like an unstoppable genius. Then, I hit a brick wall. Hard. This game can definitely be a struggle sometimes. Timing is the key to most success here. It can be super important. It can be the most important thing in a level. And apparently a lot of the time, I just don't have the proper timing. Now that's no secret to anyone who knows me, but I suspect this will be true for a lot of others too. Now, this isn't a bad thing, it just is what it is. That's a major part of 101 Ways to Die. This is especially true as levels get bigger and wider, where you have to manage not only built-in level traps, the specific level traps that you have direct access to and where you place them, the traps that you have to manually trigger, and the time frames that they have to turn on, but also where the splats emerge from, how many and how fast each pod produces them, and if there are multiple pods and or exits that the little guys have to escape to. It can become an overwhelming mess at times, but there are solutions, you just have to figure them out. And when you do, it feels great, especially after struggling so much. There's a lot of trial and error here. Sometimes I'd set up a trap, start the splats in motion, and see how they'd react to it. Then, I'd reset and move on to the next problem area, rinse, and repeat. Now, you don't have to do that, but it may help you to do so. You don't get penalized for restarting, so unless you like torture, make use of all the twos you have available to you. Sometimes even taking a break and coming back hours later would be all the help I needed to pass a course. With these types of games, you can get into your head no matter what you do, no matter how locked in you think you are. Well, you aren't. You just can't see the forest for the trees. Walking away, refreshing your mind, and returning can be exactly what the doctor ordered. Not our doctor, but you know what I mean. Lucky into 3-star completions is wonderful. There were many times I got stuck and somehow one of the splats reacted just differently enough to get himself killed, or I hit a manual trap just a smidge earlier or later than I had been doing before, and boom, master goal complete. There's just so much trial and error here that luck is sometimes the only thing that got me to the next stage. I've mentioned these splats several times without really getting into them too much. They're kind of cute in their gross, cartoony deformness. The professor wasn't trying to win any beauty contests with these guys, clearly as evidenced by their mismatched limbs, missing skin, and the fact that pretty much everything is seemingly crudely stapled or taped together just well enough to be functional. They're dumb little movers who have just enough awareness to avoid simple dangers, and that's really it. There are several variations to them as well, and each have varying health bars and characteristics between them. Killing them isn't always a walk in the park either. They do have a charming little hum when they move, though, and, their little voices are kind of cute. Until you sever their head or splatter them across the wall. So, you've made it this far, and I'm sure you're wondering what the 101 Ways to Die are, right? Well, with traps such as lava pits, death logs, slime, and cannons, there are a lot of combinations available. And don't worry, those are just a few of them. I just listed a sample. There are a lot more. Obviously, there's 101 of them. The main menu has a nice area called the Vault where you can track every way you've managed to bludgeon, maim, and spot the test subjects in the book you're creating. Each death has a catchy name, too, like Bouncing Broadside, Highway to Hell, Slip and Boom, and Tanks for the Memories. Again, just a sample, 101, blah blah blah. You've got a stat sheet, too, where you can track all the different tactics and kills you performed. That's not always a standard in games, but it's always welcome, I can tell you that. More games need to incorporate something like this. Even if you don't think the game is worth it, it should always have some kind of stat sheet. Graphically, the game looks fine. Now, I know that might seem like a dig, but it really isn't, I promise. A game like this doesn't need to have visuals that'll blow you away every 4 seconds. Not a pun. This isn't that kind of game. What the game needs to show you, it shows you well enough. The effects are what they need to be, and I rarely, if ever, had slowdown if a lot of going on at once. Again, if any of this sounds like I'm bashing the game for being simple, I'm not. Simple works here, and simple is really all we need in a game like this. Plus, the load times are fairly quick, which is a win in my book. And again, I don't think a pun was intended there, but, it just kind of, whatever. The music and sound design won't blow you away. Again, pun probably not intended. But sense the theme here, guys, it doesn't have to. Most of the time, you won't even be paying attention to the sounds it's offering. You'll be too busy focusing on the timing you just screwed up on, or whether you're going to allow that one splat to close on the exit and maybe get through just so you can get a star in the books before you start over, or should I don't know. The effects sound as you'd expect them to, and nothing seemed odd or out of place, and it all turned out just fine. This is a good thing. Again, in a game like this, simple doesn't have to mean bad. So, really, the only areas I find fault in the game are minor and some nitpicky stuff, which is kind of my thing. You'll be starting over a lot and a lot and a lot, so I wish there was a button that allowed you to instantly reset a level rather than going into the main menu, well, not the main menu, the pause menu, and scrolling down to it and then hitting the button. It only takes a couple of seconds, but after the 20th time in a row of doing it, it can get annoying. For a game called 101 Ways to Die, you'd also hope there were actually 101 ways to die. There aren't. I mean, there are, but it incorporates a lot of combos in there, so while there certainly are an adequate amount of weaponry and traps to massacre, I just wish there were more that didn't necessarily needed to be added to a combo to be one way of dying. I understand that this is exactly what the puzzle game was made with in mind, so that's why this is just a nitpick and it's nothing major. The final nitpick is that I just wish the game weren't as challenging as it can be at times, because, it is. And what I mean by that is sometimes scenarios just seem so luck and timing based that it's frustrating in just the wrong way. Now, in my fortified review, I explained that game can be just as frustrating, super frustrating, but it was the kind of frustrating game that made me want to immediately try it again and not give up. Maps sometimes took upwards of 15 minutes to complete in that game, and depending on the mode, it could take even longer. So you'd frequently be down to the last moment, last seconds of the match, and you'd die. You'd lose. So that sucked, and I wanted to immediately get back into it. In this game, sometimes I just wanted to give it up. I just wanted to give up, period. So in a game where levels can take a minute or two to complete, and that's including setup with all the traps, were repetitious, and it's starting and stopping and stop and start and start and stop, and it's all repetition over and over again. Let me tweak this just a tiny bit. Let me just tweak this just a tiny bit. That's a bummer. So when that feeling hits, it's a big bummer. It's again, it's just a nitpick. So take that for what it is. It's kind of what I do, but that is on my mind when I play this game. And here we are at the end. Now, overall, this puzzle game is certainly enjoyable. At times, it can feel a little bit too repetitious, as I said, and when that starts to hit, it's best to take a breather. Just stop. Burnout on something like this can ruin the experience, whether it be the next time you boot this game up, or another game just like it, or another puzzle game, or whatever. You can really burn out on it. If you're looking for a different kind of puzzle experience than what you're used to playing, you can do a lot worse in this game, trust me. I mean, come on, your entire goal is to kill things. That's a pretty great premise for a puzzler. Maybe the game isn't as hard as I sometimes found it, but it sure felt like that sometimes, honestly. But again, starting, leaving for a couple hours, coming back, it reinvigorates your mind. You can't fault a puzzle game for challenging its players, but you can definitely point out some flaws in the game. The game isn't perfect, but you know what? What game really is? Chrono Trigger is perfect. So if you said Chrono Trigger, you get 3 stars.